Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Shriver. I'm so proud to be the chair and co-founder of CASEL, but even more proud today to be joined by two friends, lifelong friends, some more than 30, maybe almost 40-year-long friendships, two of the most extraordinary leaders in our country in the field of education writ large, two people who have probably had a bigger effect on the life and times of America's teachers, America's children, America's families than almost any two people anywhere else in the country. My great friend and the great leader of the Congress, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, and Professor Linda Darling-Hammond. I think everyone knows, these are household names, everyone knows that Rosa has been a leader for four decades, starting at the grassroots level. She and I share a love for the city of New Haven, where in some ways we both cut our teeth. Her mom, her family, legendary leaders at the grassroots level, building community, one family at a time, one block at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one school at a time, rising up through her career to be the chief of staff for Senator Chris Dodd, and then in her own right now leading the Congress. Simply a stand-up, no BS, if I can put it that way, leader of our country who will not compromise on the needs of children and families. Working families. That's Rosa DeLauro. Rosa, congratulations on this award, this inaugural week of SELLYs. Linda Darling-Hammond, there's not an educator in America, maybe not around the world, who doesn't know that name, who doesn't know the legend. She too has a little bit of history in New Haven. She doesn't talk about it all the time, but we've all crossed paths through great leaders in education and public policy who were in New Haven, grassroots leaders in the New Haven public school system, and also great scholars like Ed Ziegler and others who shaped a generation of scholars, including Linda, and enabled all of us, I would say, to become committed to the social, emotional, academic development of children. Linda, the publications are in the 600s now, professorship at Stanford, leadership of the National Commission out of Aspen, on social, emotional, and academic development, really a legend of the support for teachers around the world, and one of the most insightful thinkers really in the history of American education about the points at which policy can make a difference. Congratulations to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It is a particular treat to be here with you and with Rosa, who is also a hero of mine. And of course, Tim, over all these years, the work that you've done has really defined this field. So what a thrill.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. So Linda, why don't we start with you? Tell us where you think the work in social and emotional learning is today.
I think that there is a much greater recognition of the importance of social and emotional learning for academic development than there has been for a very long time. I think the pandemic not only brought to the surface all of the inequalities, that we experience in our country and in our education systems, and that's allowed folks like Congressman DeLauro to work on them more proactively, because folks are really stepping up. But also the fact that we do have to take care of social and emotional supports, wellness, help kids be able to deal with all of the trauma that the pandemic has caused. And schools are paying all across the country much more attention to the ways in which academic learning has to build on the foundation of social and emotional learning. We've got a lot of science, we've got a lot of research that we didn't have a decade ago. Our dear friend Roger Weisberg and others who synthesized bodies of knowledge helped us see that social and emotional learning supports academic learning as students understand how to identify their own feelings, how to be interpersonally supported and collaborative, how to organize themselves to work through feelings and conditions and contexts that they encounter. They become stronger scholars too. It's not a deflection from academics, it's the pathway to academic achievement. So that recognition is wonderful. There's a lot going on in the country that is really organizing schools in new ways to be alert to the whole child. We also have those challenges of figuring out how to do it, how to do it well, how to integrate it into the academic work that's going on. Lots of professional development needed for educators because the path to greater teaching is always through greater learning for teachers. And that's a big part of what we're working on right now in the country.
So you mentioned the challenges, Rosa. If I could come over to you, I don't want to give you the harder question right away, but you know, it's a tough climate politically in our country, not just on education, on everything. And there's a perception in the country that things don't get done in public policy. Things aren't getting done in the Congress. Maybe that's partially true, but a lot of things have gotten done in recent years with respect to supporting the social and emotional development of children. Are you hopeful that coalitions of Republicans and Democrats can be held together around these needs of children and the support that teachers and parents and families need?
Well, first of all, let me just say how delighted I am to join with you, Tim, and with Linda, and just applaud the work that you have done. And we do go back for so many years. It's family, you know, going back. But your work, whether it's Special Olympics, whether it's CASEL, I'm so grateful. This is your life's work, and it has been so critically important. And I would just say one other piece here, which is that I have the initiative on social emotional learning is so near and dear to my heart because inspired in New Haven by Dr. Comer, by Jim Comer, and you mentioned Ed Ziegler and Yale Child Study and your association, and Linda mentioned Roger Weisberg, and you know, just want to you all have set the path, the tone. You have the research has made this at this moment, I think, so critically important. And I would just say to Linda, to you, and to Tim that I think that the understanding, or the better understanding of social and emotional learning and achieving academic success through SEL is it's here, it's now, and we have to grasp this moment. And when you think about it, as Linda was talking about it, I can't, you know, it's wonderful to see you, and thank you for the unbelievable research and the scholarly work around this issue, because that's what we're grounded in. That is what we are grounded in when we're talking about dealing with public policy. We can only make public policy and get the buy-in of Democrats, Republicans, if we're standing on solid data and research. But when you take a look at SEL, it's about understanding and managing emotions. It's positive relationships. It's being able to make responsible decisions. And what you do is you translate that for children and what an impact it has on their lives. It is that for so long, it's just been cognitive. You know, our focus has been on cognitive development, but now this new understanding of what allows children to be able to succeed and reach their own goals, and setting those goals and being able to reach them. And there's an equity piece of this as well, because we know with poverty and schools that are hampered by poverty, or students hampered by poverty, that this is a way for us to be able to reach them and to focus on how we can help them realize their own dreams and aspirations. And I would just say to you, but I believe we can engage on this issue more now than ever. It is not viewed as the soft side. It's not viewed as mushy. It's viewed as really statistically, analytically determining where we can go. But I look at Sherry Bustos, I look at Catherine Clark, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, Tim Ryan, all of the folks, when they come to me and ask me what we're going to do in the bill, it is social and emotional learning. We've got to get the funding for it. We've got to get the revenue for it. So it's an important moment. We are on the cusp. And window, you all know what Washington is like. The window opens and then it closes. The window is open, so we need to try to move forward and get this information to our colleagues on both sides of the aisle.
You mentioned this moment of opportunity and the resources that are, you know, significant now. I mean, you're right. I mean, we used to come up to the Hill begging and scratching and thinking maybe we could get a couple $1 million for a new fund, or, you know, Linda, who's a past chair of AERA, a little bit of research money here, a little. Now we're talking really significant amounts of money, and we don't know how long it lasts. But see, Linda, can that money be well spent in the districts? What are you seeing in districts that are getting now this newfound enthusiasm and support from the federal government and from many state governments? Are they able to deploy it effectively, quickly, in ways that will make us all proud 3-5 years from now?
Well, I mean, it's part of the story to be told, but I will say that Rosa mentioned community schools, and I think that's a really important piece of this. The capacity to wrap around services, mental health, health services, social services, and also to access these funds and make sure they get to children and families in the ways that are intended without a lot of bureaucratic barriers in between, you know, the funding and the children. And so creating schools that are able to wrap around the supports that are needed and use funds in ways that are very, very efficient as well as effective is going to be very important. But I am seeing a lot of great work going on in the schools, and I just want to stop and applaud the educators all across this country who have been dealing with this pandemic, who have had so many stresses, you know, in their own lives as they've been, you know, distance learning and in-person learning and quarantining and, you know, managing, you know, reaching out to families, getting them digitally connected, figuring out how to handle the trauma that so many families have encountered. But there's wonderful things going on in so many schools that I'm seeing with the opening of schools, at least in California, where I am currently president of the State Board of Education. So I pay a lot of attention to what's going on here. That folks are understanding that the school year is about, you know, re-engaging. It's about building trust. It's about helping people process the experiences. It's also about building the skills and the capacities to be, you know, together as whole people in the learning process. And to build the academic foundations on that base. So I hope the funds will be well used everywhere. I do see community schools popping up as one way to do that. California, we've got a major initiative in that regard, and we're not the only state that is doing that. And I think the other thing that's important is that our educators' social and emotional learning and their mental health and wellness are so important to the mental wellness and the success of children. And so one of the things that happens when you introduce an approach to social emotional learning is that everybody's learning how to be together in ways that are productive, how to eliminate all kinds of bullying and stereotype threat and other challenges to learning. We know that people learn more effectively when they're in an environment where they can experience trust, where they have positive feelings about each other and about the setting and about themselves as learners. Our brains, you know, open up and allow us to learn much more effectively. And when people see that, when they experience it, they want to do more. They want to, you know, create a setting in which, you know, the school is a place for learning, for healing, you know, and for being together in ways that allow us to become better human beings as well.
Tim, if I could just pick up on something that Linda said, because in my head that I hear the voice of Jim Comer, and when we sat
all day long,
you know, it was the whole child. What that meant was that the entire school, you know, the principal, the superintendent, the principal, the educators and teachers, and hats off to teachers. Oftentimes they have taken a bad rap, but we have found that they have been heroes in this last couple of years. But parents, the outside organizations that need to come together, the partnerships that need to form in order to be able to effectuate what we want to try to do in that learning experience. It is not warehousing our kids. It is having them in a place, you know, where we're dealing with the whole child and developmentally with the whole child. And, you know, particularly now, and I think about it, you know, the trauma of the pandemic and the statistics are really pretty extraordinary. I believe it's 140,000 children in the United States have lost either a primary or a secondary a caregiver. And that's about 1 out of 4 of the COVID deaths. And this information is just through June 30th. I mean, so this is serious. The lack of socialization, you know, it is so that the task is even greater these days. And so my hope is that with the use of the funds that we are addressing, I worry about mental health issues. I really do today. I've worried from the beginning of this and what was happening to children. You know, it's tough enough for grown-ups, but what is happening to children, so that if we are then spending time thinking about how to use psychiatrists, psychologists, counseling, all those pieces, I think need to have to come together. And I would hope that that's where some of the money is being spent. The other piece of this, since it's based kind of on the Title I model that you have, that where it goes, that the money is going to the schools that are you know, most impoverished. And we know that poverty is just a grinding, you know, a debilitating effect on kids, that we are looking at where these monies are being directed, as well as, you know, I just, again, last point, community schools, the Dr. Harry Conte Community School in New Haven. I taught in the after-school program, believe it or not, I couldn't do it today, either modern dance or calligraphy, you know.
As 3 of us have directly or indirectly mentioned Dr. Comer, Dr. James Comer, who in some ways is the grandfather or father or scholar of the field of the whole child, the social and emotional and academic development, the development of children. He always says to me, you know, if educators had a basic science and it were just the science of child development, the country would be a different place.
That's so
One
true.
of the things he's emphasized that was done at Harry Conte and at Martin Luther King Elementary School in New Haven and at others, Baldwin, yep, was the role of parents. And today, the role of parents has become a divider issue between our political parties. Parents are being used or seen as disempowered by some factions or re-empowered by other factions. Isn't there a common ground on the empowerment of parents in our can't we find a common language for how to speak about the important role that parents play in every local community, in every school board, in every district? How do we get back to a politics of affirming the power? And we had it in Head Start. I mean, it's not like we don't have this as a country, but we don't have it right now politically, right? Am I being too negative?
I think, and I get very, very concerned because I not only watched what was happening in Guilford, Connecticut, but in some of the other communities in Connecticut as well during the recent election. But and I said at a gathering on Saturday in Guilford that the politics of misinformation and of divisiveness and of fear. Fear is a great motivator, particularly for parents, Tim.
Yep.
And if you're going to talk about how their children are at risk, they are struggling, given what's happened in the last couple of years. They are struggling and want to be, you know, have felt that as parents, that they have not been empowered, that they were struggling to be able to really be the major force in their children's lives.
Right.
You know, and it has been tough because it was probably a double-edged sword. There was more time being spent with children, but it was remote learning. If you're trying to cope with a job and even your own job remotely, or going to a job, if you had to do that, what is happening to your children. And then if you lay on top of that this notion that somehow we are using the education system to brainwash your children, or they're not getting educated, that we are putting them in a difficult spot, that you have to, and contrary to what is being said, parents do have a very strong role. And we tried to create that, as you pointed out, with Head Start.
Yeah.
We tried, that was the whole point of
Yeah.
engaging parents with their children and reading with their children and helping to train, helping to provide educational opportunity to parents so that they could be the first teachers of their kids. That's what we have been all about. But,
right.
you know, that's why we need extraordinary leadership at this time.
Yeah.
A political leadership. I'm sorry to say, and I'm going to just say this: if we do not get ahead of this train, of stopping this misinformation, and of, you know, just with a full-scale education campaign around what's being done, we are just going to be trying to play catch up, and we won't. We will continue.
That's right, we won't.
Device.
But how do we? What's your sense of this? It's so, in a way, such an affirming principle amongst all educators, the role of parents, and yet we're living this narrative that parents are at war with educators. How did we get here? How do we get out?
I think that if you talk to people about the core values of what they want for their children in school, you know, parents, you know, of all political persuasions want kids to go to school and be, you know, attached and happy when they get there, to, you know, be in a classroom that, you know, enables them to learn how to be good citizens, you know, of the classroom and of the community, that is, you know, able to, you know, create trust and opportunities for kids to, you know, be who they are in that setting. I mean, I think all parents want this for their children. I think what ends up happening, and I think Rosa said it very well, the misinformation that gets put out there, and there's a lot of effort to divide, you know, Americans on all kinds of partisan political grounds, that somehow social and emotional learning is about telling your children what to feel or something, you know, rather than helping them, you know, become, you know, competent human beings who can recognize what's going on in their lives and, you know, have supports to, you know, work through those little tussles on the playground or the issues that may come up in the classroom. But I think part of it is getting back to basics in that sense, that is really talking about what we do want in common for our children. Get rid of labels. I think the problem with labeling, and then, you know, labels get taken up as and redefined and, you know, misinformed to create these divides, I think is a really huge problem. And of course, you know, parents are, I was just gonna say, parents are key to the relationship in schools. So in schools that are really practicing social and emotional learning, you're going to see parent and teacher and student conferencing. You're going to see people able to connect with each other, call each other up when there's a need for the child to raise that child together, you know, in a way that is productive. But we need people to understand what the core basics really are that I think do engender a lot of agreement.
I was going to say, Linda, that, you know, Congresswoman DeLauro said, I think I heard her say, we can go back to the tape, we need a campaign of educational leadership that will seize this moment. I'm just thinking there might be a job description in there for you. But we do. I mean, it's you know, maybe this is the kind of thing that can't necessarily always be done by a political figure, because a political figure will always bring a party affiliation and therefore always feel like a us versus them a little bit. But is there a strategy here, Rosa? I mean, you've studied public policy what would help move the policy levers, the power that you need to pass great legislation? How could we do this right now? I mean, this is an immediate question for us. So we need leaders like you two to tell us what to do.
This is an immediate issue, and it is a campaign, because don't misunderstand what is happening on the other side of this. It is a very structured campaign of misinformation, and misinformation for political gain. That is what it is about. You will see, and it's, now it's, and we just not need to listen on the TV with, taking a look at what happened in Virginia and potentially other places, but look at, we are going to watch this same pattern of divide and fear in education as it's being viewed as successful. It's being viewed today as successful. Therefore, we need to take it seriously from today. And there is a campaign to be formed. And I think you are right. The Congress is its greatest strength is its potential. Its potential. The external forces on the Congress are critical. And I say this, Linda knows this, Tim, you know this, your listening audience knows this. The voices, that external pressure is all of the folks who are out there today.
Right.
Who, yes, and the voices have to be heard. So there has to be that scholarly, and I say the research, let's stand on the shoulders of data and information versus anecdotal or misinformation, and that to get the word out, let's figure out on the ground how that can happen locally with groups meeting with parents. And it's not political people like myself. DeLauro comes as a Democrat with a particular view, but who can come? Who are the third party validators that can get to groups and to people at the ground level? But it is also the letters to the editor. It is about the op-eds. It is about various, and with your efforts, the communications piece of this, which gets the word out. And I feel so strongly this morning that we have to move, and we have to move now, and not say, well, no one is going to listen to this.
So we have, what is public policy if not the organization of ideas into clear and coherent strategies, right? You've spent your life trying to influence public policy. How do we organize, right? If you had to give a message to teachers or school board members or superintendents or principals right now, what would the message be about how to organize, if I can put it this way, good on behalf of parents and children, not on behalf of parents versus children or parents versus schools? What's the best advice right now?
I think the best advice right now is to really lean into the ways in which we can strengthen relationships. So the schools we have, were inherited from the 1920s. The scientific managers created the, modern school based on the model of the assembly line that Henry Ford had created in, in his factory model. And they're not particularly well structured in many cases. People have always worked to redesign them, but for relationships, you put the kid on the conveyor belt, they get a different teacher every year. In other countries, kids may stay with the same teacher for 2 or 3 or 4 years. They get a different teacher every 45 minutes in middle and high schools. And there's not time in the day set aside for teachers to reach out to parents. Our teachers have 8 hours on average less per week for, collaborative planning and learning and outreach to parents and students who have needs than in other countries. So we need to redesign our schools, but in ways that really favor relationships. There's got to be that time for regular engagement with parents. There's got to be, for those, parent, student, teacher conferences, for home visits, for, the outreach that allows those relationships to build so that everyone understands that we're raising kids together. We need advisory systems in middle and high school so that that advisor is the advocate and the point person and the place where social and emotional learning can be taught and practiced, and supports for academics and for any other needs that come up can be attended to. We need places in the school. And we know that this does not distract from academic learning, you know, that in fact it supports it. If people worry about using that time in ways that strengthen the relationships. When we do that, we saw this in the pandemic in many schools, you know, the relationships changed between parents and educators. They became closer in many cases because they needed to. They really did have to co-educate children. We need to not go back to the old normal, but we need to create a new normal in which those relationships are what the school is designed around. Educators have time for it. Parents are welcomed. They're reached out to, and where the sort of social and emotional support and wellness of parents, families, of kids, of educators are all front and center, because we're figuring out together how to be supporters for the development of that whole child. If we can do that, I think the labels will begin to fall away and we can get the work done.
Well, what you need also to have the structure. I mean, you know, finding the time for
Right.
it, because everybody is in the workforce today.
That's right.
Or I think it's critical, Linda, what you've hit on here. You know, there were parent-teacher organizations. There was parents and teachers, because after parents, teachers have the greatest influence on youngsters. How many hours a day do they spend with them? So what is the new model? What is a new model that we need to try to take a look at, that puts that faith and trust of parents in teachers and vice versa, that
Yeah.
we need to be linked together.
In San Francisco, places that have personalized instruction with the time and the structures to take care of young people, and teams of teachers share groups of students. The curriculum is very explicit about, in fact, in one of these schools, the kids learn about the brain science that undergirds social and emotional learning and write about it. It's part of what they do. And they have those personalized relationships because of that redesign. So we can do it, but we're going to need to really be explicit about it. The federal government at one point in time had a lot of grants for that kind of school redesign.
Well, we need to talk about
Let's
that.
get it
I'm
back.
curious, because I say the window is only open for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about the last 3 years, 20, 21, and 22, and we
Yeah.
have made significant
The gains have been
increase.
huge.
You know, and the gains, look, and I look at it as well as things like Title I and some of the other pieces that we have been engaged and involved in. And these pieces are all interconnected. They're not silos, you know, so that,
right.
you know, and being able to, you know, integrate the various efforts. I think we have to show, and today more than ever, we have to show parents that their children are in the best hands in a public school system.
I know we're out of time, or at least almost out of time. I want to take a chance at the end here. I think we're all grandparents, or
Six.
Yeah. So this is a moment in your careers where your legacy has to be coming into focus, what your wish is for the next generation. I wonder if you have a letter or a word or a sentence or a message to your grandchildren, either of you, that you want to make sure that educators and families and young people around the country hear from the perspective that you now occupy, with the wisdom that comes with the experience, and still the hopefulness that you've both manifested. Linda, when you look to those little folks, what do you hope for them?
Well, what I hope for them is that they will have the opportunity to be in settings to learn to be kind, to learn to believe in themselves, to find their particular path to greatness, you know, whatever is their passion. And they're very different little guys. I have 2 young grandchildren, and that they're surrounded by, you know, the opportunity both to become who they are meant to be in all the best ways, and to, you know, learn all the things that they're curious about, inquisitive about, in a way that allows them to contribute to each other, to the communities that they're in, and then to the world that they're moving into. All of the work that Rosa was talking about a moment ago, that this Congress has been doing to create that world in which children can be safer and more supported.
I've got 6 grandchildren, all different, all very, very different, and there's no one better than my 6 grandchildren.
Wow.
Right, I got it. I want them to believe in themselves. I want them to be confident in who they are, and to also not to be afraid to stand up, to speak out, that they have good views and they have good sense. And I love to be kind, but to listen to others, to understand that this is about, what I talk about with them is what we do in the Congress, or we used to do better than we're doing now, is we don't disagree in a violent way. We disagree with words, but if you listen to others, they can persuade you to their point of view. You can persuade them to your point of view and bring them along. And then the last 2 things, which I did learn from my mother, is to never give up and don't take no for an answer.
You both mentioned that your grandchildren are all different.
Yes.
And you both, I think, said very similar things about your hopes and dreams for them. And I think as we close this conversation, this extraordinary conversation, maybe that's in the seeds of those words, that we are a very different and diverse country. Each child that comes into school, each child that sits before a teacher today is a different child, right? Each child, the neurodiversity, maybe the whole range of human gifts bring this extraordinary diversity that you've spoken about. And yet these common hopes, discovery, kindness, service, resilience, strength, listening, it's like you've just defined a little alphabet of social and emotional learning skills. So I leave the last word to the 2 of you on this occasion with my gratitude. Any last comments, Linda or Rosa, that you'd like to say to educators on this occasion of your recognition?
Well, first, I just want to say how great it's been to be in conversation with both of you. This has been a wonderful way to start our day, and to say to educators, be kind to yourselves as well. Become who you want to be as an educator. I mean, I think that the ways in which we enable educators to embody all that we want for our children and the way we support them has everything to do with what happens for children. So I want to both say thank you to educators, and to say, be kind to yourselves, and to all those who support educators, take that very seriously.
First of all, I would just say many, many, many thanks for this for this award. And I take it not as a reward for past work, but as we make our way into the future and what we can do, and do that together. And to educators, it's like I would say to my grandchildren as well, you are a very special breed. You, again, are, after a parent, you take on the responsibility of educating our children, and be confident in what you're doing. With Linda's point, is be good to yourself, and really understand how much faith and trust we put in you. And within that, you derive the confidence to teach and to listen to our kids, and to help them to grow into kind and loving and responsible, all that you teach them through social and emotional learning. Help them to, become, adults who are going to care about each other and everyone. And that is, it's who you are, it's what you are about. And pay no attention to the attacks, because we know the value of teachers. And if there's been any misunderstanding about that, I think families have understood the value of educators and teachers over these last 2 years and the role that they play in the family's life and in their children's lives. So,
ladies and gentlemen, these are your SELLY Award winners. We pay tribute to the two of you. Our entire country, certainly the CASEL family, pays tribute to the two of you. We pay tribute also to our great friend Roger Weisberg, who inspired both of you, I know. And one of his great messages was, when he taught children in 6th grade in New Haven, set a positive goal. You have set positive goals for all of us. And we commit, I think, as a community to answering the call you've laid before us and to following in your footsteps into the future. Congratulations,
thank you.
Congresswoman DeLauro and Professor Linda Darling-Hammond.